Alrighty, the attendee list has leveled off. I want to thank everybody for joining us for the eTruckBiz weekly update. I said we got a pretty interesting topic today, even though it seems like it's far out in the future, but it'll be here before we know it. And believe it or not, it will be impacting your business sooner than later. So without further ado, I'll turn this over to Jeff Walzak.
Thank you, Ken. And as always, we need to let you know that eTruckBiz is not sponsored, endorsed, or anything else by FedEx Corporation. And as we do every week, we need to get a word from Becca. So there she is.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name's Becca. I am the sales manager here at eTruckBiz. So for those of you that may not know what eTruckBiz is or what we do, eTruckBiz offers business support services for FedEx service providers. So we know how fast-paced this business is. The services that we offer are meant to make service providers' life easier, all while making sure your operation is profitable and successful. Also, we have something very exciting coming hot off the press. Easy Route 2.0. So this is the AI route optimization, even better for Network 2.0. Over the past couple of years, we learned a lot about how service providers are handling Network 2.0. So we updated Easy Route to better serve our clients. And this is just a sneak peek of some of the changes that we have done here. And this is a screenshot directly of the new Easy Route 2.0. Pretty cool stuff. Running a FedEx-based transportation company is no small task. We know the operational, financial, and workforce pressures FedEx contractors face each day with the driver turnover, Network 2.0 complexity, cost and margins. We have the fuel, maintenance, shrinking revenue per stop, compliance and admin, so DOT regulations, FedEx audits, payroll, human resources, that all land squarely on the contractor with no support. This is why there is eTruckBiz today. So our mission is to transform challenges into pathways for your business's prosperity. So how we do this, eTruckBiz, we have the all-in-one business growth and support system. We have different programs focusing on different areas. So our Admin IQ program, this is to eliminate administrative burden. We have Performance IQ to improve productivity and efficiency. Budget IQ to gain financial control. Safety IQ is coming very, very soon. This is to protect your bottom line. And then we have the software that ties it all together, one system for everything. So you can build the business you want. So BGSS by the numbers, right now we have over 100 clients on the BGSS programs. And out of those clients, we've improved their budget by 1.7%. And on average, they see about a 20% increase in operational efficiency. So if after hearing today's presentation, you want to get on the path to navigating the next 2+ years, here's where we start. You want to start with getting a free budget and expense plan. This is completely free. I just need to gather some information from you. It's super quick and easy. I just need a little bit, and our session usually lasts about an hour. You can scan this QR code and get directly on my calendar, or you can always send me an email, becca@eTruckBiz.com. Even if you have any questions not pertaining to the budget and expense plan, but let's say any of our services or the programs, please let me know. But please reach out, becca@eTruckBiz.com, and I will help you.
Well, thank you very much, Miss Becca. And as we do every week, we want to look at how did the volume do last week. So we've been pretty much on a downward trend here for a few weeks. So the pickup volume on the vans was down. Delivery volume was down a little bit. And productivity, Ken.
Whoa, I am depressed. Down to 95 stops per dispatch. Getting farther and farther away from that 100 stops as the volume declines. Man, we have to right size our operations because every stop is deteriorating the margins.
Sure is. So we got to watch it. And then we're going to talk about something here this week, okay? And I know some people are going to say, well, that's 2 years in the future. Well, that's why we're going to go through this presentation today, because actually this time around, it might mean something to you, and you'll see why as we go through here. So why we're talking about 2008 and 2026. The UPS National Master Agreement expires July 31st to 28. It's the key date driving everything we're talking about here. So about 2 years. Industry experts are already warning of a tsunami in the parcel market, and this will happen regardless of how the negotiations play out. So things are going to happen whether they go on strike or not. We saw this pattern before. In 2023, shippers moved volume 5 months early to avoid disruption. So if you're a shipper and you ship stuff, you can't have your packages in the middle of who knows whatever's going to go on. You need to get your product out and delivered so people can pay you, so the wheel can keep turning. It started kind of happening, some volume started moving. But here's what's different this time. FedEx Network 2.0 is actually reducing FedEx's capacity, which means there may not be any capacity come the spring of 2028. So that being the case, if you're a astute traffic manager someplace and you know not to have your volume in the middle of all that, you're probably, and if you're aware that the capacity isn't there to take on the volume anymore, you may want to move it over sooner. So the critical point here is the competitive winners in 2028 will be determined by decisions made now. So we're going to have to do stuff about this now in 2026 and 2027, not by what happens at the deadline itself. This time around, for sure, you can't wait that long, right? So let's talk about some strategies and what's going on here and different things. There's some numbers that are driving the fight here. Of course, some UPS drivers are up to $65 an hour. Guess what? Doesn't work, but that's okay. Let's pay them $65 an hour. And that's an all-in number with benefits and who knows what not pensions, but benefits, health insurance, all kinds of other stuff, which compares to a FedEx guy. If they get benefits and whatnot, it could be up to $37 an hour. However, you'd be surprised what some of you are paying folks by the hour when you look at it that way. And then this time around, for sure, there's a regional, or you can call gig labor, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But guess what the big number is on that slide? All right. Now, the fundamental challenge in the industry is talent, not necessarily throughput. Your real competitor isn't another logistics company. It's actually whoever else is recruiting your drivers. So you're competing with all the other contractors in your building, in your station, in your terminal for drivers. Yes, Amazon, local trucking, local delivery companies, they're after the same pool of drivers you need. So daily contractor pay of $135 to $180 in the industry is about, in the FedEx space, is roughly its standard, but it's not enough to solve retention. So the numbers are stark. 30 to 40% annual turnover means you're constantly replacing people, especially now. 1/3 of new drivers don't even make it 90 days. Every strategic decision you make, routes, technology, operations, ultimately depends on having qualified drivers in the seats. So it's not about moving more packages. It's about keeping the people who move the packages, right? So before we get into some of the nitty-gritty here, let's point something else out. There's something called the McKay Doctrine. The McKay Doctrine is a foundational U.S. labor law from a 1938 Supreme Court case. So it fundamentally shapes how strikes and worker protections work today. So there's 2 points about this. Employers can legally hire permanent replacement workers while employees are on strike. The second thing is when the strike ends, employers don't have to fire the replacements to rehire the original strikers. That's the basic ruling that still applies today from the McKay Doctrine, right? Now it gets a little complicated because the NLRA actually protects workers' rights to strike without being fired. But the Supreme Court also said employers have the right to keep their businesses running during labor disputes. So you're going to get some tension. Strikers technically keep their job status legally, but they can be permanently replaced, lose their actual positions. There's, I'm sure, going to be new Supreme Court cases, everybody and their brothers suing each other. So it's a balance between worker protections and business continuity that still causes debate today. Now, we're going to try to talk about 3 possible outcomes to the whole thing that's going to happen here. It's not here yet, but it'll be here before you know it, as Ken said. So this is a high stakes scenario where UPS pushes hard for competitive wages and something called roadie for residential delivery, essentially forcing a choice for a UPS worker to either accept that UPS is going to use gig workers, or are you going to go on strike against that? So under the McKay Doctrine, we just talked about, UPS can permanently replace economic strikers. This is the legal framework that changes everything. So there's 3 critical pressure points. There's a strike replacement pool. UPS won't struggle to find replacements. They'll recruit directly from FedEx, contractors, and Amazon DSPs, the same driver networks you participate in. This isn't theoretical. These workers, these folks already exist. And guess what? They might be available. Timing is brutal. You're facing, when this starts to happen, if the later and later it moves into closer to a strike date, you're facing the best volume environment that there's been in years, but the worst labor environment at the same time. So you're going to get caught in the middle with no necessary, at that time, you won't have any preparation time to do something about it then. I hope that makes sense. Any questions about that out there? See if there's any questions about that. So anyways, a prolonged strike creates a domino effect. Members start crossing picket lines out of financial pressure. So eventually, if the strike lasts too long, then the strikers start saying, oh, I need money to eat. So guess what? I'm going to cross the picket line. I'm going to work. Once that happens, decertification becomes legally and politically viable for the first time in decades. The union's position will weaken irreversibly. So the core risk isn't just about losing a strike, it's about losing the union itself if the strike drags on. So the folks at UPS know that this time around, based on some other things we're going to talk about here in a little bit, this might be their chance to eliminate the 2-headed horse from their midst. Might be. But what stands in UPS's way? Taft-Hartley. The president can invoke this to pause a strike for 80 days. It's a political tool that resets everything, so management just can't wait it out indefinitely. The UPS pilots. The pilots union honored the Teamster picket lines in 23, and if the air operations shut down, that's actually catastrophic pressure on the management folks. It isn't just the ground workers if the pilots join them. There's also pension withdrawal liability. When UPS exited the Central States pension, it cost them roughly $4 billion. That was a while ago. Walking away from Teamster pension obligations would be financially devastating. This is a massive liability hanging over any headline strategy. And then there's political optics. This is about brand and reputation. Breaking a 330,000 member union is a huge political statement. This carries a real political cost either way. So as the bottom line, these four factors make the just outlast the strike approach far more expensive than the surface calculation suggests. So this is one thing that could happen, but this is going to be, that would be very damaging. So breaking the union, they could do it if they want to pay the price to do so, and that could be one of the outcomes, right? Okay, there's a second outcome possibility. UPS wins without a strike. It's the least discussed scenario, but possibly the most likely. The mechanism is a lawful impasse allows UPS to unilaterally implement a final offer. They could also lock out workers. So in 25, UPS cut 48,000 jobs, closed 93 buildings, and they say they saved roughly $3.5 billion. This year, another 30,000 positions were targeted. Roadie, UPS's non-union delivery service, continues expanding underneath the existing contract. So quietly, very quietly, they've been recruiting and getting more and more people that drive vans and other stuff for UPS, right? What would happen next year then is as they're doing that, shippers start diverting their business early. That's the big thing we need to keep trying to tell you here. It looks like some shippers are going to not wait till 2-3 months before the strike might happen, but they're going to go ahead and move the volume probably next year. You know why? Because guess who's going to tell them they don't have any capacity to take their volume? That's right, FedEx. Guess who else is going to tell them they don't have any capacity?
Amazon.
Amazon's a whole nother interesting part of this whole thing, but they don't really, they kind of have their own thing going on. They're going to get affected by UPS. The next scenario here will tell you that is going to go after their drivers too, but the Postal Service is going to tell FedEx, sorry, can't take any more of your packages early on too, right? So that's the reason why a lot of this volume is going to shift earlier rather than later this time. So anyway, in 27, UPS is a leaner and meaner machine. They've closed buildings. They've saved a bunch of money. But in 28, they wind up, UPS will declare an impasse and implements their final offer unilaterally. Shippers face no strike disruption. But here's the issue with that. That's the worst one for FedEx contractors, for them not going on strike. This is a worst case scenario, and here's why. Without disruption at UPS, there's no volume windfall necessarily for you. You don't get the diverted packages you might otherwise capture. Yes, they're going to build over the course of a year, but not the big, huge spike you would otherwise see. But here's the real problem. UPS emerges structurally cheaper and hungrier. They've streamlined operations and cut costs. They can now undercut FedEx pricing and still be profitable. Meanwhile, you're still competing for the same drivers. UPS is still recruiting from your labor pool. You face all the wage pressure and recruitment challenges, but without offsetting volume gains. So you get the worst of both worlds, margin pressure from a leaner competitor and labor cost pressure with nothing necessarily to compensate for that. Okay. So Sean O'Brien's reelection in June of 26, unopposed to a second-year, 5-year term, puts immediate pressure back on UPS regarding driver buyouts. So a hybrid model is taking shape as the likely compromise outcome. Teamster drivers handle middle to large operations, and roadie takes on the residential last mile delivery. So that's kind of what's happening right now. You've got on the FedEx side of the house, you've got couriers handling some of the things. When you go to 2.0, some of you will have couriers or FedEx Express folks doing different things in that operation. And then you're going to have contractors doing other parts of the operation. One of the outcomes could be, well, tell you what, the Teamsters say that's fine. You can have the roadie people out there doing all the residentials, and we'll just do all the businesses and in city stuff. That could happen too. So the 23 contract cycle created a playbook that shippers are now using. This is our baseline for understanding future negotiations. So UPS lost 1.5 packages a day during the last time they lost 1.5 million packages per day. It was more, it was a bigger hit than they anticipated. When the contract settled, UPS captured about 40% of that volume back. But FedEx permanently kept approximately 400,000 packages a day. That was a real lasting market loss, that 40%. Anyway, the critical insight here is that the surge isn't temporary. Some of it sticks. Shippers found alternatives, tested them, and kept them. That's the new reality we're planning around for 2027 through 2028. This isn't about what just happened in 23. It's about what shippers learned and what they'll do this next time. So FedEx has been shutting down 475 stations, at 30% of the entire network by the end of 27. This is a major structural change for sure. Network 2.0 was built to cut costs by eliminating excess capacity. Here's the problem. That excess capacity is exactly what saved us during the surge periods from before. FedEx is going to tell shippers they can't take the extra volume that could be created by whatever happens at UPS. That's a big deal. Now, there's two things you as contractors can do and think about it. Let's try to create a scenario here. You got extra volume. Do you take that volume and just do it with what you got? Do you absorb it? Or are you going to add routes? In this case, our little scenario here, add 2 routes to handle it. You're going to have to make that decision, right? What's the better way to do it here, Ken? Is absorbing it, or should I put on 2 routes?
I'm going with absorb, and hopefully I get a gold star for my answer.
Yes, you did. You got a gold star for your answer. So here's what's going to happen, folks. We just told you that FedEx is going to tell the shippers that they don't have any capacity. It's true. Structurally, they have fewer buildings and all kinds of other things, and they folded the first part of 2.0 is going to be done, and it's going to be, there's less folks out there. They have less capacity. But what do you think FedEx is going to do? First thing they're going to do, they're just going to shower you guys all with money so that you can pay people more, or
They're going to fill the system.
they're going to want you to fill your capacity first. Okay. Most everybody on this call, most everybody that watching later on YouTube, not everybody, but most of you have capacity. We talk about that all the time. That's actually the thing that's crippling your businesses. That's the thing that why you can't pay your bills or why you're not making the margins you think you can't make is because you've got capacity that's not being used. So the first thing that needs to happen is we're going to need to take this extra volume over the next year and a half and fill it up.
Yep. And there's different ways to add capacity. Is option two. There's also you can increase your stops per hour. That will increase capacity. You can increase your average on-road hours per dispatch. That can increase it. You can slip seat a truck so the truck can be utilized more. You can utilize helpers in certain situations. So there are ways to increase your capacity without just adding routes and adding costs.
All right, but if you do add routes, then what happens? In this case, percent of surge volume leaves when UPS resolves so 40% goes back. So you put on 2 extra trucks, then a bunch of the volume left it. Same thing vid. People were putting on trucks and drivers and everything else, and then the volume dried up. Now we're going to wind up with
Unutilized capacity.
Yes, we're going to be right back to where we started. So the main thing we want to get across today is it's always a battle between good and evil. You know, a guy does 200 stops a day and he comes back at 1 o'clock. And how can I tell that guy to do 250 stops and all the whole everything we hear all the time. But in this case, this volume is going to be, it'll be slow next year. It'll come a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. But at some point towards this time next year, and then as we go into 28, you're going to have to make some very serious decisions about.
There's a comment that kind of relates right to this right now. I'm skipping the first comment, but this one says, so would it be best to lease trucks for 18 months? So I think the point of this is to have you take a look at your business and see what's right for your business. For some people, that 18 months might be a way to add capacity. For other people, is there already underutilized capacity within your operation without, taking on the cost of that?
First, let's see if you have any capacity already without spending any money on anything. Let's see what's there. It could be, and most of you think that, oh, I can't put any. Well, let's do some engineering and see, right? That's first. First, you fill up your excess, if you have capacity now, fill it up now. Then you have a plan for, if I get another 200 stops, you're going to have to put a truck on. At that point, yeah, you have to. People are going to say, well, FedEx is going to pay us more. Everything is going to pay us more. Yeah, they're not going to pay you anymore. This has already been established. They're not going to pay you anymore unless you're already near or at capacity. Right now, at that point, and there's some other things we're going to talk about here in a second, but at that point, they're going to have to pay you more. But they're not going to until they have to.
Yeah. They pay you per dispatch. They have to make sure that you are maximizing the dispatches that you are utilizing.
Right. So, let's see if we... So the driver war, if we call it that, is the real threat. If for some reason UPS either goes totally non-union, which I don't know, has hell ever froze over before, but it would then. If UPS for some reason either goes completely non-union or there's some sort of hybrid, which is what is likely going to happen, they're still going to come after your drivers, right? Well, when we say they're going to go after your drivers, what are we talking about here? So if the Teamsters get disbanded or crippled or wounded, whatever happens, not only is UPS going to go after your drivers to try to fill, let's say, non-union roles, who knows what'll happen, but there's going to be a whole lot of dues that aren't going to get paid anymore. So you think our friends at the Teamsters sitting at the restaurant right now having a 3 martini lunch, Ken?
No, they don't have a .org email address either.
They're going to go looking for new members. And where do you think they're going to look? Hey,
Jeff,
Yeah.
real quick. Remember the Teamsters too. They let YRC Yellow go without. They said no, we ain't doing it, and they're pretty much dinosaurs because they couldn't adapt. They're non-existent right now.
Who?
Yellow Roadway. So
Oh, yeah,
that
yeah.
was Teamsters.
Well,
They were Teamsters.
That they're locusts. So they found a home at UPS. Now they wreck that company. So they're going to go someplace else. And what we're trying to tell you is they're going to start coming after FedEx ground folks. It's hard to organize the ground people because they're all different, 6,000 different businesses. It's just really very difficult to do that. But if they lose a whole bunch of revenue from the Teamsters, guess where they're going to go? They're going to go anywhere they can find, right? But it's another threat.
And they're not going to pay them $38, $40 an hour. They're going to start them off at 18 and 19. But they're going to promise them pensions and full benefits and everything else.
This goes with the question. Says theoretically, if they are non-union, then doesn't UPS lose a huge benefit of working for them? Kind of a little bit confusing there, but yeah. I mean, the union does supply the benefits, but it's all funded through UPS. So, but you said that hybrid model, I think what Jeff has mentioned is really where they're looking.
Well, if this plays out like this, let me say this before we go into what to do about it. What good can come of this?
Well, hopefully you got increased volume, and if you have increased volume with increased efficiency, it should improve margins.
That's for sure. If we can handle it, yes. If we can handle it, and we do what we're about to say here in a second, if we can do this in this manner, then this will come out smelling like a rose. But there's a lot of things here. So bottom line is, so what we really need to do is recognize that UPS or whoever is going to, if UPS goes after Amazon drivers, they take all the Amazon drivers. Where are the Amazon folks going to go to get their drivers? They're going to come after your drivers. Everybody, their brother's going to be after your drivers. So if they're coming after your drivers, what are you going to have to do?
You have got to protect your labor force.
No, yes. Now, if FedEx isn't going to throw money at contractors, which I don't know, they need to start thinking about what they're going to do about this. But let's just say they hold the line and they don't just throw money at especially unproductive operations. How are we going to defend ourselves? The per hour rates, people are going to have to, everybody's going to have to pay drivers come this time next year and forward, are going to start escalating for sure. So you're going to have to do the same thing. Now, where are you going to get the money to pay for that?
It's not going to come from FedEx.
Unless it has to. That's the thing. We can argue if it has to or not, right? At some point, they're going to have to recognize that they're going to have to help, but they're only going to help the folks that are helping themselves. How do we help ourselves? We're going to have to do what we said, right? We're going to have to make sure that we don't have trucks coming back at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We're not paying day pay and having all kinds of unused capacity, right? So what we can do is we can say, look, we can start having some meetings. We're gonna have some meetings with our crews and say, look, we're gonna end up paying you guys more. Oh no, Jeff, where are we gonna get more money to pay the guys? I can't make any money now. You're gonna have to do that through what we just said. Higher productivity, higher efficiencies, because if you have a more productive, more efficient operation, your margins will increase. If your margins increase, that's how you can pay the folks more. That's how UPS does it. We can say what we want about the Teamsters, but they're some of the most productive workers they are the most productive workers in the industry. That's how UPS can pay them $60 an hour. It's because they're knocking off stops left and right. Right. But we're just going to have to, that's why we want to get out in front of this now is look, yes, we always preach productivity and efficiency. Yes. But we're going to have to start changing some cultures. Right. Well, I don't have to worry about that for 2 years. You're going to change your culture in a month.
People have proven that waiting on Network 2.0 to be implemented and then try to change their culture. And that's a disaster. That's why we've preached change before Network 2.0. So now we're saying change now. It's 2026, not in 2028.
The 2.0 has taught us that changing driver culture is very difficult and takes a long time. Right? So we're just trying to get you to think about all these things well enough out in advance so that hopefully we can do some things.
And this kind of goes with our first comment said, did UPS go on strike maybe last year, the year before? They don't have to go on strike. It's the threat of the strike. And as Jeff mentioned earlier, FedEx will announce that they are going to be out of capacity in 2028. So if you don't move your business in 2027, as they said in the hotel business, there's no room at the big old inn. There's not going to be room for your package for a traffic manager packages. So they don't have to go on strike for this increase to happen. And it doesn't have to wait until 2028 for that migration of packages from UPS to FedEx.
This is not one of those things where you could say, I don't have to worry about that till later. Folks, now, yes, we're early on it for sure. But if I had one of these operations, I would be thinking about what I'm going to do to change driver culture, what I'm going to do now to see if I can fill my unused capacity. What can I do now to utilize my resources to their fullest? I'd be doing it now. And doing it now is going to make your margins increase now.
You benefit from being better now.
Nothing wrong with that. So anyway, that's really the thing is to start thinking about it now, start making some changes now. So anyways, we can help. One of the things that would be great right now, if you're listening and the way to kind of start, and this is what Becca said to begin with, is to get an expense or a standard budget and expense plan. That's where are we at now? What's going on now? Where should I be spending my money now? What would FedEx expect me to do to get to capacity now? That kind of thing. There would be a great start is taking some sort of inventory now and then going from there. What do I need to do to get to where I want to be in next year at this time? Right. All right, Ken.
I think we got all the questions. I don't know if there's any others, but I said this is a forward-thinking presentation, but at the same time, by thinking about it now, you can start to change the culture in your business, and your business benefits from the improved culture, from the improved on-road hours. I said, if you're going to have to pay more for drivers in 2027, what do I have to do? I got to generate more per hour. That more revenue per hour will support more cost per hour. So I think we talked about that with the hourly labor rate. That was last week, where basically if you improve 2 stops per hour on each driver, your increase what you're paying your drivers is paid for. So that's why the hourly stops per hour is the best way to increase your capacity. The other way is to increase the hours that the trucks are on the road. The worst way, but sometimes necessary, is to add vehicles and drivers. So, but yeah, because it says meaning competition for drivers is already crazy out there. Separate your business from other CSPs in your building. How do you do that? You balance your dispatch. You teach them the proper methods. You teach them to be efficient. And I said, by balancing the dispatch, they know around within an hour probably when they're going to be off of work each day. So, doesn't look like we have any other questions. Bob, do you have anything to add?
No, no. Just don't wait until it's too late. Start it now.
Excellent. All right. I'm sure we'll have more in this series. Jeff's done a lot of research on this, and the market's already talking about the UPS contract of 2028. So hopefully we're your information for this. We're also your information for your own business, free budget and expense plan. So if we don't talk to you before next Tuesday, please have a safe and profitable week. Thank you very much.